For those who are preparing for retirement in the Philippines and seeking for effective ways to plan for it, today's discussion will shed light on the matter with the help of our expert registered financial planner, Randall Chongson. No stranger to the show. Randall, thanks again for being here.
Hi, Edric. It's nice to be back, as always.
I know, and I think we may have had some angles on retirement in
we
either
quite a
off
number of
camera
times,
or on camera.
Yeah, probably did.
But let's help our viewers again. And the opening question I have is, let's go with basics again. Factors to consider when planning for retirement in the Philippines.
Well, number one, your lifestyle. Your lifestyle would determine what kind of a retirement you should have. And there's something that we teach people. Your lifestyles don't change just because you're retired. For instance, Edric, you're used to traveling and drinking Starbucks coffee when you were working and stuff. You probably do that also when you're retired already. So you want to be able to be not too far away from what you used to spend.
Okay. Do you believe in the factor of what you spend now actually might be 20% less, or you just factor 80%? Or
in finance, we
is
have
that changing now?
We're saying that we want to be able to prepare 75% of your pre-retirement budget. So assuming that you retired at 60 with 100,000 budget. So probably 75,000 is good enough. There's things that you will remove.
Okay.
But there are things that you have to add on, like medical costs and stuff like that.
All right. So let's talk about those things, because you did say the factor. You consider your current lifestyle, and most likely it will be the same, maybe with some factors like you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
So the other factor you now said is medical. So
medical
obviously.
costs.
So how do you now put that into the picture?
Now that's a problem, because that's you wouldn't know how much. No? Some people spend a lot on medical, some people don't. So you just have to put a factor. Maybe 20–30% of your budget would be allocated for that. What we do is, your current lifestyle, your current budget, in a big way will be similar to what you're going to have.
Sure.
You're going to remove, let's say, amortization, education is not going to be there, but you're going to replace it with something else, like medical costs or maintenance medicines and your checkups and stuff. So it will be more or less not too far. That's why we came up with a 75–80% of your pre-retirement.
Okay. Tell me about locations. Is that a factor when you think about retirement here? Is that something that's happening now?
Syempre,
going out of the home, or?
Yeah, Metro is always more expensive. Metro Manila is more expensive. Fort Bonifacio is more expensive. So again, all these things put the factor. So a lot of people are thinking of going back to their provinces. So you see, one of the most Googled places to retire is the Philippines. No? So they're looking for certain areas that are not too expensive, still beautiful. No? That's why you see certain areas like Dumaguete or parts of Cebu and Davao that people would like to stay there. Because Metro is more expensive. So that's a factor. Where you are, of course, the kind of lifestyle that you want to maintain, or you want a big house, or you want to stay in a condo, but your condo is right in front of a shopping district. So again, there's certain costs that are going to be part of it.
What about travel? Is that still a trend for retirees? They still want to go and see the world, quote unquote?
Yes, what's one, but also a lot of the Filipinos now have children abroad, so they'd like to be able to visit. Remember, you have a son or a daughter who are in the States, you're probably very, very busy. They don't have that much time to visit you here. So there's a tendency for the retirees to visit them.
Sure.
So it's one of them. That's a factor. A lot of these modern Filipinos, they have a kid in the US, a kid in Europe, and a kid in somewhere in Singapore. So
correct.
They'd like to be able to visit that also. Sila yung nag-visit.
Let's work towards those factors now, step by step guide. Where to begin, how to get towards those factors.
Do the numbers. Know how much money you need. A good way is, if you were to retire today, assuming that I'm retired today, how much money do I need? More or less you can gauge that. Or maybe I need 100. So from that 100,000, you will now want to be able to project that in the future. Say I'm retiring in 15 years, assuming a certain inflation rate, an average inflation rate, say 4%. So 4% in the next 20 years, how much will that amount of money be? So when you have that amount, then you now have a starting point. Now, question is, how much do you actually need so that you can sustain that? So there's a computations for those things.
When you get that number, is it as simple as working towards that goal? If you have that magic number
you have
already?
to be, assuming, Edric, I say, so assuming I need about 1.2 million a year.
Okay.
So assuming that I will compute for the next 20 years.
Sure.
And let's just assume that that amount is 5 million.
Okay.
So that amount of 5 million, that's only good for 1 year.
Okay.
So once you get that amount, probably you want to be able to multiply it by a factor, let's say, times 10.
Sure.
So at least you're guaranteed for the next 10 years. Or you multiply it by an investment rate. So that amount of money you can actually use back so that, you just live on interest.
Do you notice that in your experience, people are able to faithfully work towards that amount that they need, or are there distractions?
That's the sad part. There's a study that shows that only 2 out of 10 Filipinos actually do prepare for retirement properly.
Okay, yeah.
And there's another study that says that those who prepare only 50% actually prepare enough. Because you can say that I have something for retirement.
Sure.
If it's just $1 million or $2 million, that's not going to be much. So unless you were able to buy properties, then you have to rent it out and stuff like that. Then it kind of works for them. Some of them I've seen were deliberate. It's just that they were very thrifty. They bought properties when it was low, and now they're renting it out. So it was enough for them. But some of them really are having a difficulty because they were not able to prepare. And plus the fact that the factors back then are not the same as today.
There you go.
It's easier to buy a property 25 years ago, and you're pretty sure that it's going to be rented out today. But today, that's not the same factor.
Okay, so moving forward, how would you advise people to prevent those distractions?
Well, number one is to have a goal. You must always have to have a goal. I mean, well, number one, you can never really fully fund your retirement because it's a number. It's just a number. I mean, I can come up with the numbers, but it doesn't mean anything if it's not really quite to what you want. Plus the factors do change in your life. No? You want to have to be able to have a goal. At least you have a minimum goal. You want to be able to finance it. How will your SSS have an impact on that? Say, assuming that my SSS, by the time I project that, I'll get something like $12,000 a month, and I need something like $70,000 a month. So I must be able to come up with an amount that could bridge the gap. So rentals, investments, growing my money in mutual funds. Do I choose to, have a passive income back then, or do you still want to have an active income, or do you just want to get cash and just stretch it? Some people do that. I mean, everything is in cash. I just stretch it for as long as I can live. So it depends on your preferences.
Okay. Does it help also to inflate your projection rather than deflate?
We normally encourage some form of inflation at that point. The number now, that becomes relative because right now our inflation numbers are really, really low.
Yes.
I mean, it's less than 1%. But don't use that because that's just for today.
Correct.
That doesn't mean it's going to be like that.
Correct.
So don't use a very high inflation. Some people I see when the RFP, when they submit, they use 10%. It's so big. I mean,
correct.
Somebody tells you, I'm just earning about 150,000, then you have to have 150 million by the time you retire.
How will I get 150 million?
Remember, it's behavioral.
Right,
so
right.
Stake to a good number, say 4% or 5%. That's a good number. It's not too high, to demotivate you. It's still possible, but it's not too low that it's gonna deflate whatever it is. This money is behavioral. So
sure.
Some people, they look at it as one big fund, or some of it they don't want to do it. Of course, travel fund muna, or this is just for medical. Whatever works for you best, whatever that you can stick to it. Because at the end of the day, it's not how good you are when you're investing about these things. It's how disciplined you really are. So if that system works for you, then go ahead, break it down. It might help you further. Some people, they don't need to do that. Some people, they find it confusing when they break it down. Or let's say some people, they have multiple accounts. That works for some people. That doesn't work for everybody.
Correct. I see. So know your money profile also, how you behave with money.
But there's certain basics, no? You want to be able to make sure that there's enough money. Don't put everything in properties because it's not liquid. Don't put them on everything in risky investment because, there's always that risk. So you want to be able to balance, diversification pa din.
Can you give me the top challenges people have in being able to get to their retirement goals?
Setting aside the money early enough and sticking to it. So let's say I'm 30, I read your book, I watched your show, I read the book. I want to start 30. Baka by 35, you stop na. So again, you might think, no, I tried something. So that's the biggest hurdle. The discipline is the biggest hurdle. Allocating money from your budget. Remember, it's always going to be a struggle with, do I use the money now and enjoy it? Or do I sacrifice now and enjoy later? There's always going to be a struggle for that. And then the family dynamics comes in. Your spouse and your family might be, either can help you with that or can, go against you. For people who are not as, I'm not saying not disciplined, but, not as, they don't want to complicate things. You want to be able to set aside an amount on a monthly basis, part of your budget. Auto-debit it or put it in a fund or whatever it is that you can do, and just, stick to it. From time to time, you want to be able to increase it because your income also increases it. Investing and preparing for that is largely determined by your income. So as your income increases, then you might want to be able to do more of those things.
Okay. Thanks, Randall. We're going to pause for a short break right now. Up next, our guest will be answering viewer questions on retirement.